All right, welcome back to chapter 7 and the final chapter in in this guide. So at this point, by now we should have a cool character or two and a bunch of different cool screenshots and videos that we took. And maybe if we do this process over and over again, a couple times, then you'll have a couple characters, getting better every time, which is the goal. So now we have a lot of stuff. How do we get it out there? So in this chapter, we're going to be talking about how to actually get a job. So what you need, what is required to actually get your foot in the door or just start a freelance career. And the first step for every artist is exposure. So exposure comes in many different ways, but the most obvious one is online exposure. So this is what I'll be covering. Exposure is absolutely everything. So just like it is important to create good art that people will love, it's extremely important to get that art seen. So if if nobody sees your art, if you work in your bedroom and that's the extent of it, you never share your work with anybody, nobody will ever know that you exist, and nobody will ever be in a position to hire you if they don't ever see your content. So that's the goal here with exposure. You want to be seen by as many people, and then the logic goes that if if there's a lot of people that look at your stuff, there's very likely going to be a person or somebody that knows a person that will be in a position to pay you to get you in a studio, to get you an interview, or to offer you just like a paid gig, like a freelance gig or something like that. So it's one of those things, exposure starts really, really slow. It's like a snowball effect. It starts, you start really like a couple snowflakes, and then it gets bigger and bigger over time. But then it's exponential. So the bigger the ball, the more it can grab as it goes down the slope. And then it's very similar with art. At the beginning, you'll see very, very little action for your art, very little interest, and it's fine. Unless you're an absolute god from the very beginning, which is likely not the case because nobody starts off good. You always have to work for it. So it'll be a long time before you see any kind of action, but it's super important to plant your seeds as many places as possible. And that's basically what I'll be covering in this first part of the chapter. So there are many different places that you should upload your art onto, and I'll try to cover as many as possible. So I would guess that you're probably on a couple of these, but it's important to be on all of them if your goal is to eventually get hired. So I'm going to start with the portfolio platform. So those are kind of like the most obvious ones because you don't have to create a website, you don't have to do anything. It's a platform that already exists. It has a lot of traffic already, at least most of them. And then all you have to do is you just sign up and then you start uploading your content. So very, very simple. And those are kind of like the no-brainers. So the first one here is DeviantArt. DeviantArt's been around for a bajillion years, I think 17 years to be exact. And the reason that I mentioned this one here is because this is the one that's brought me all my opportunities. So it's thanks to DeviantArt that I found my first job and then my second job as well. So, exposure, if done well, if you spread your content everywhere and people actually have more chances to discover you, then it's likely that you won't ever have to apply anywhere. That people will discover you and then reach out instead. So that's kind of what happened. So yeah, the DeviantArt layout, not that great, but again, there's a lot of traffic. It's one of the most popular websites on the internet, and it would definitely make a lot of sense for you to be on here. So DeviantArt, first one. Next one up is CG Society. CG Society is also kind of helped me get my job at Blizzard. So which is why I mentioned it second. And yeah, it has a pretty a much better layout in this case, kind of like a Tumblr blog, very similar to that. It's a nice clean layout, and it gets the job done. It's very simple to upload your stuff. So yeah, definitely be on here as well. It has a lot of traffic too. Another one that you probably know is ArtStation. So ArtStation It's all about art. All you see is art, which is great. There's almost no interface whatsoever. And yeah, very simple also to upload your content. There are some other ones like Pixiv, which is a Japanese website. I think they have an English version. I might be wrong, but anyways, I know a lot. Yeah, there you go. There's a lot of artists go on here, so that's another great platform. It's pretty popular, so not far behind ArtStation. So it's a really big platform. A lot of the Asian artists are on this website, so highly recommend this one as well. And so as far as the portfolio websites, that's pretty much it. There's again like a lot more that you should probably get onto, but those are kind of like the big ones. If you definitely don't want to miss any of those. So next up is social media. So social media is always going to grow. It's one of those things that you really need to get on. And yeah, so the first one is Tumblr. Tumblr is, I would say, it's not as typical of a social media platform as kind of like the other ones like Facebook and things like that, and Instagram. But definitely easy to share content on Tumblr. And again, you can kind of choose your layout. So it's kind of a hybrid between a portfolio website and your own website. So you have a little bit more say in how things are displayed. So it's kind of like the middle ground there. So it's really nice for that. So this is mine, for example. In this case, I'm not posting just my content. I use it kind of like as a reference board. But yeah, if you want to use that as kind of like one of your portfolio or like one of the places where you can put your art, it's definitely a good idea here. So Tumblr, really nice. Pinterest also. Again, just making it easier for everybody to share your content. Obviously, you want to have Twitter. That's kind of like the obvious ones. You definitely need a Twitter page. It's definitely a good idea to have a Twitter account and kind of like keep it updated a lot. Like post your work in progress on here. And yeah, Twitter is a really good one. Of course, Instagram also. Make sure you upload a lot on Instagram. It's one of those that you need to constantly be updating. So again, another one that's very similar to Twitter. So yeah, like a daily update, like whatever you're working on. People on Instagram like that stuff a lot. And next up, Facebook. So Facebook is probably the biggest, the most important platform for artists, besides portfolio websites. So there's just so many opportunities on Facebook here. So you can have your Facebook page, which you should definitely have. I don't have any because I don't really care about that part of my career anymore. But definitely have a Facebook page for your art only, not your profile, not your profile page on Facebook, but an actual artist page. So where people can actually comment. And there's no like friend limits or anything like that. So it's just a very nice way to keep people updated. And since everybody uses Facebook all the time, then they're way more likely to see your updates on here. So yeah, have a Facebook page for sure. And then what you want to do on Facebook also is whenever you post something, post it on the different groups. So there's a bajillion groups. There's an infinite amount of groups on Facebook for artists of any kind. So you kind of have to find the ones that match your art field. But there's a couple ones here that I want to recommend. So 10,000 Hours, a really good group, has a lot of members. So your stuff will get seen, and it's always a good gauge of how good your stuff is. If you don't get much likes on it, it's probably because it's either it has nothing to do with this group. Like if you post photography, obviously you're not going to get that many likes. But likes is always a little bit. A lot of people say that you shouldn't really take into consideration how many likes you get. But likes, I would tend to say the opposite. The amount of likes that you get is a really good indicator of what people think, what the public thinks of your content. And working in the game industry, working in the VFX, working in the entertainment industry as a whole is all about pleasing people, all about making content that people like. I'm not talking about art as a hobby. If you can definitely keep art as a hobby and just work on your own stuff and really don't not care about what people say. But if you're gonna make a living out of this, it's a job, right? So you have to make stuff that people like, that people enjoy, and likes on Facebook, just like it is like favorites on whatever else platform. The number of clicks that you get, the number of the number of likes that you get is a really good indication of how successful your piece is. And it also is a good way to fine tune your content. So you can, if you upload a bunch of different things, you can see which ones got the most like, and then you can try to look at what might have interested people a little bit more with that particular piece, and then try to have some more of that in your following ones. So it's a really good experimenting tool as well for that reason. So you experiment, you try to post different things, see kind of like the feedback from people, and then fine tune over time. It's just a more direct way. Before there used to be forums and things like that where you could do that also, but with Facebook it's just a lot more direct. And then there's another one here, Level Up. So it has I think this one is one of the groups that has the most members again. So you'll get a lot of views on here, and it's a really nice group to see a lot of cool art, and a great way to get exposure as well. And then for 3D especially, ZBrush, Pixologic ZBrush group. So get on there and upload your sculpt. Another really good group for that. And then as far as social media, that's pretty much it. So there's always going to be new platforms that come out. So whenever they do, jump on those. Social media is not going to go away, and it's only going to grow more and more and more. And as an artist, to get exposure, it's one of the best places to achieve that. So make sure you get on top of that stuff. And then, as you can see already, that's starting to be a lot. It's a big list of things, but those always have to be updated all the time. So, not only do you have to spend time on your work to improve your work, but you also have to spend a lot of time kind of like back and forth with people, or just posting everywhere, and try to post like kind of like different things on all those different ones, so that people can follow you on all of those. All right. So, next up is kind of like the final one. There's going to be a bunch of forums too that I'll be covering after this, but this is the final one that I want to talk about: having your own website. So having your own website, there's a bunch of portfolio websites that you can use, that you should definitely use. Sure, but it's always important to have your own website. It's more professional, and it's one of those things that you have full control over. So if you want to, you can do anything with it essentially. So if you want to hire somebody to make you one, if you are not technically gifted, although to create your own website is very simple. Most cases, you just you get a WordPress account, and then you select a theme. And for website, for something simple like this, for art, you'll have a bunch of themes that will be very, very easy to customize. Even if you don't know anything about creating websites, it's just a bunch of things that you have to click here and there. And then there you go, you have your website. It's your own. Of course, you have to register your domain, but most of the time, you can do that in WordPress. So very simple. Again, it's made for people that don't know much about building websites. So it's not as easy as a portfolio website, but it's pretty close. It just takes a little bit more work, but then it's all you, right? So you control everything with this. So I'm just giving this one as an example, which is one from my good friend Renaud, which is who's the lead artist, the lead 3D artist on Overwatch now. It's a really good example of a very effective portfolio. Simple layout. Each of these are kind of like groups, so you can click on it and see more. Recruiters really enjoy those kind of portfolios because they are easy to browse, they're quick and simple. So there's no loops anywhere where you have to kind of like dig in to find the art. Everything is out there. It's right in your face, and it's just simple. So keep it simple. That's kind of like the key here. All right, and then lastly, we have the forums. So forums are an incredibly useful tool for artists. It's very, very easy on here to post, work in progress, to have conversations with other artists that are like you. It's an amazing way to get criticism on your work, to get constructive criticism, feedback, and to give feedback of your own, to artists that are not as good as you or even, better than you. Forum is kind of like the best way to interact with people and to improve your art. So everywhere else that I've mentioned is kind of like a boutique display, right? So you display your stuff and then people walk by and then like, oh, it looks nice, and then they carry on. So you'll rarely get valuable feedback on those other platforms. The forums is where it's at. So that's why forums is still very, very, very important for that. It's where you'll grow the most as an artist, at least in my opinion. And there's three main forums that I want to talk about. Obviously, the QBrush forum. So it's a more recent one. It uses a top-of-the-line forum engine, which is called Discourse, and it makes everything a lot simpler. So you can just click and drag your stuff in there, add a comment, and then there you go, it's posted. So very, very simple to use. Probably the forum that's the easiest to use out of all of them, and which is why I highly recommend it. And it's also getting a lot more traffic as we grow. So really, really good one here. Next one up is Polycount. Polycount's one that's been around forever. It has a lot of members. So another one that's really important to kind of be on. Very 3D focused as well. So in this case, it's pretty relevant. And Polycount, it can be a little bit more toxic than in QBrush forums, for example. Still a very good forum to kind of like grow as an artist and to learn from really, really talented people. And then, of course, ZBrush Central, which is all about ZBrush. Especially in this case, since this is a 3D career guide after all, very important place to post your stuff. The usability of the ZBrush Central forum is pretty crap. So it's not the most user-friendly. It's kind of old school, but hey, whatever. It's still a good place to get exposure. And then I'm sure there's a bunch more that I'm forgetting. But so look around. Essentially, you want to be on all of those platforms. So, again, it's a lot, right? So it's a lot to update every time you post a new piece. I always kind of compare it to playing the lottery. So for me and for almost everybody that I've talked to, along the way, kind of like throughout those years, it's always happened kind of in the same way. So you'll post for a long time and not much happens, and then suddenly you'll create a piece that people really like, and then that piece will blow up, and then will kind of go viral. So, and then that's how a lot of people will first get introduced to you, and then from there, that's how it really, really starts. And that's where people will start sharing your stuff, and then the second they discover you, and then discover the rest of the stuff that you do, that's where it begins. And then of course after that, from there, if you keep posting often and never stopping, that's how you grow a huge following, and that's how you get a lot of eyes on your content. So it's not really like an exponential curve. Well, it kind of is, but it happens in this way. So it's not going to be much for a long time until there's one piece that you create that really gets things started. So which is why you want to be on as many platforms as possible. There's never any telling. You can really never know where it's going to get picked off. Sometimes it'll be on Twitter, sometimes it'll be on Facebook, sometimes it'll be something that someone sees on DeviantArt, and then they share it. Like maybe you'll get a daily deviation or something like that, where you'll get suddenly a lot of traffic on your content, way more than you've ever gotten before. And then that's how things begin. So that's what happened to me. I had been posting on DeviantArt for a long time, for years, and without with modest success. I was getting more and more interest for my pieces over time, which is good. It's a good indication that you're doing all right. But it was never that many people. And then all of a sudden I got a daily deviation. So somebody somewhere found an image, and then they submitted it to the admins, and then they got featured. And then that's how everything started for me. So, and it's been the same for most of my friends in the industry. There's always kind of like one piece that kicks off their career. and it's impossible to tell. It's impossible to say where it's going to be picked off, where it's going to be featured. So that's why you want to, like I said, it's like you're playing the lottery. You want to buy as many tickets as possible. Get on as many platforms as you can, and then it'll just increase your chances to get that big breakthrough. All right, so now we know where to post our content, but how often do you post, and what kind of stuff do you post on each of those platforms? So one thing that's really important is to not post the same, and not post the same everywhere. Different platforms require kind of different treatments, and I'll try to cover or give like a general idea of like how to approach this. But the best way, is to always look at somebody that's doing it really successfully and try to copy that. So if you're, like I said, like each of the platforms have kind of like a different approach. Like Twitter, what you post on Twitter should be a little bit different than what you post on Instagram, just because the two platforms are different, so they require different things, and the kind of content that people expect is different also. So if you want to achieve the best result, have the greatest exposure, it's important that you do this. So first things first, for each of those, I would find kind of like a role model, somebody that you think is doing it very successfully, and try to mimic whatever they do. So, if you have an artist that you're following on Twitter, and you're kind of like not sure what to do on Twitter, what to post, then just look at them, look at the frequency of their posts, look at the kind of content that they post, and try to mimic that, as best as you can. So a general rule that I want to say, like beyond obviously like copying other people, not copying, but like try to mimic the behavior of other artists that are doing it successfully, is to look at it like for every big platform, every platform that's not social media, I would recommend that you upload something on there, like a finished piece, something that looks good, that can be shared at least once a week. And no less than that. So what's important with all of those platforms is that the momentum is huge. It's a huge factor. And then if you lose it, you have to start from scratch almost every single time. So you really do not want to lose your momentum. And to keep it going for all these platforms, all the website platforms, all the portfolio platforms, your own website, things like that, everything that's not social media or forums, you'll want to upload something at least once a week. More is better, but at least once a week. That should keep your momentum going, and it should keep your people interested in coming back regularly. So you have to train people to expect something from you. And then when it comes to social media, on the other end, for this you want to upload a lot more often. So the best would be to upload something every day. If you can do that, it doesn't have to be a completely new piece. Obviously, that's a little bit hard to do, but you'll want to upload something, whatever it is, like a work in progress. As I said, like it doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be much progress. Just post something, something that's interesting, something that's artistic, that people can see you're making progress, and as a result, it motivates them, and or it makes them interested in you and how focused you are on your work and how dedicated you are, and then it makes them want to follow you, and then makes them want to talk about you to their friends. And so social media, every day post something, whatever it is, like I said, work in progress, doesn't have to be much, just a little bit of something, and then post one big piece, like something that you're proud of, something that looks really good, at least once a week on all your platforms. So that should keep your momentum going. And if you keep doing that, as I said, as I keep saying, you have to keep doing this for a long time. If you do it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months and you're not seeing any kind of results, that's normal, and you should expect that. You're not going to see much progress, and that's completely normal. The same goes for everybody. It's when you do that for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, then you really, really start to see results. And if you don't quit, which is super easy to do. It's easy to quit, and it's easy to be like, it's too much work, and I'm not seeing any results, and so screw this. But those people are not going to get the exposure. The people that will succeed in this industry are people that don't give up. And so that's kind of like the essential part that you need to be doing all the time, is constantly uploading something. All right, so as far as exposure goes, that's a pretty good kind of like summary of the things that you should do. So, look at this as being your homework. So, you have to do a little bit every day. on the side of marketing, which is what all this is about. And then you have to do a little bit every day on the artistic side. So, always keep those two kind of like tied together. They're very important. One cannot live or cannot sustain without the other one. So if you just do art in a bubble, you're never going to be seen. You're never going to get where you want. And if you just do marketing and you don't actually do any art, or you don't post much progress, then people are not going to be interested in whatever you do. So it's a balance. You need both, and you really need to do both to be successful. So this is kind of like the first step. So if everything goes well, if you're showing a lot of progress, if you don't give up, and if you're really dedicated to this, you do this multiple hours a day, you spend a lot of time on your work, and then you spend a lot of time kind of like, putting your work out there, that should be a really, really strong foundation. And it's more like if you don't do it, you're hurting your chances. And then the next step, or also not really a next step actually, it should probably be something that you do all at the same time, is be active in the community. So it's easy to be active on forums because, just because of the nature of the platform. It's a platform that's there to discuss. It's there to chat with other people. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of back and forth there. But comment on other people's stuff. Don't wait for people to just comment on your own stuff, your own art before you reply to them, before you talk to them for the first time. Go actively looking at other people's art, comment on their stuff, try to give them valuable feedback, good critiques, and try to be helpful. And then people will notice that, and then it's another way to get exposure. So you don't have to post. It doesn't have to be only art. You can easily get exposure by just being really, really helpful in the community, by giving a lot of good, words of encouragement, and like following a bunch of different people and trying to actively help them. And that might seem like a waste of time for you, since you're trying to get your own exposure, but you really can't look at it this way. You have to do your part in this big kind of like art community. Otherwise, it's not gonna go the way you want. So it's a give and take thing, and you have to be as out there for the other people. So if you're expecting them to do the same to you. So so that brings me to kind of like the community side of this whole career thing. So it's very important to be nice. So it's a little bit kind of like obvious to say for some, but there's a lot of artists that kind of shoot themselves in the foot when they respond like negatively to people that they don't feel are as good as them, or like when somebody gives you critique and you think that their art is not that great, so you kind of like dismiss whatever they're saying as being irrelevant, useless. That's the best way to ruin your career before it even starts. So the art community is actually a very tightly knit family. So if you get in, great. But it's really easy to get kicked out. You just have to be a turd, like if somebody gives you feedback and you kind of ignore it or things like that, if you're not humble, you'll get shut down real quickly, and it'll kind of just ruin all the work that you've done. So not only does it benefit you to be responsive, to be helpful, but it will definitely hurt you if you're not. So there's a lot of people that will try to give you feedback, and then, like I said, if you find that their art is not up to par, not up to your level, it's easy to dismiss them. But what you really have to keep in mind is that you're not, if you get to work in the industry at some point in time, you're not going to be creating art for other artists. You're going to be creating art for the general public. So it's really them that you need to impress. So that's why, if you're going to get feedback from people, you should actually probably listen to the feedback from the people that have nothing to do with art, that suck as artists, because those are going to be a better representation of the people that you'll need to impress, to make a career. So it's great when other artists kind of like praise your work just for the technical aspect of it. but as a whole, it's almost more valuable to get the feedback from non artists, because those are going to be the one consuming your work when it becomes your job. So there's always good feedback out there. There's no bad feedback, essentially, unless somebody is just bashing your work and telling you it's crap. Then that person's probably not going to do that well. And it's safe to ignore those negative comments. But when someone is trying to help you, regardless of their skill level, you should always listen. All right, so that pretty much covers it for exposure. I think, if you follow all this, if you post on all of these things and you kind of like follow those guidelines, you should do really, really well as far as exposure goes. And again, it's not a race, it's a marathon, and always keep that in mind. All right, so what's next? Now you know what to do with your art. You know how to really get your name out there in the community and make a name for yourself. In the best case scenario, that's all you will ever have to do. You wouldn't have to apply anywhere. You won't have to do anything else. If you keep doing this for a couple, for a while, and you start to see more and more success. Eventually you'll start to get people like contacting you to do maybe like art commissions. Like they want something for themselves, like just private freelance work. And then maybe some magazines will start to contact you to do interviews, or like some websites to do interviews with you, or and then it'll grow from there. Maybe you'll get invited to do tutorials, or maybe you'll get invited to on like a podcast or something like that. So those should all come in like different steps. As you get more and more kind of like fame in the art world, you'll start to experience all of those kind of like one at a time. And then, and then eventually it's very likely that somebody will just contact you and offer you a job. So they'll be like, maybe it'll be a recruiter, or maybe it'll be a recruiting firm. They'll be like, are you interested? We're looking for people for a particular job, blah, blah. So that's the best case scenario. Like when people want you, that makes it very easy to not screw up the interview process because they're already in a position where they're putting you on a pedestal almost because they're the one asking for you. So that's the best case scenario. Obviously that doesn't happen for everybody. That probably doesn't happen for the majority of people. So if that's not the case, if you want to get in faster, if you want to get in sooner, because you can, you don't have to wait for people to reach out to you. You can actually start to actively seek employment. So how do you go about applying? All right, so that's going to be kind of like the second phase of this whole process. How do you apply? So there's two ways that I'm going to talk about. One that is very obvious. So you go on a website like this, whatever it is, whatever your dream studio is, or you can also look at different job boards for smaller indie studios. So there's no real place to find those jobs, but there's like on ArtStation, you'll have kind of like the job section that you can look at to get an idea of like all the different jobs that are available in all those big companies. But if you want to start, if you want to have like more chances to start somewhere, it's probably best to look at indie studios first, or like smaller studios, or like video or like mobile studios, where the technical requirements are not as high as AAA games, where the quality doesn't have to be just like top tier like it is for those games. So it's just a matter of finding kind of like what's in your area, with the game dev maps, like we looked at, in the first chapters, and try to find a couple studios that are next to you, and then look at their websites and see if they have job openings. So it's just a matter of looking through the list, see if there's something that interests you, something that could be a good fit for you. So if you want to be a 3D artist, for example, then you look in here. Is there something for me? Senior character artist. Let's see. All right, click that, and then they'll kind of like let you know what is needed. So you can, in most cases, you can just ignore all this stuff, right? So like the requirements, responsibilities, blah blah blah. It's all kind of like more or less the same for all those companies, and the requirements always crazy. So this doesn't matter, right? When people see this, a minimum of 5 years experience, people always freak out because they're like, well, if I'm gonna start, how do I have experience to start? So those 5 years generally speaking, you'll probably get them at a smaller studios where those requirements are going to be a little bit lower. But that doesn't mean that you can't still get hired. Like as your first job at a game, like at a video game company like Blizzard or Riot or Naughty Dog or all those big companies. It's just a matter of how good your portfolio is. So so you can probably like ignore most of this stuff, kind of useless. Same with the pluses. And what you really need to pay attention to in all those websites and all those kind of like career pages is the submission and portfolio requirements. So this is going to be very, very important. So if you don't do this, exactly what is required of you, they're going to be your application is going to be dismissed. So the first people that look at your work are not the art recruiters. Most of the time, it's just somebody working for the art recruiter, like a assistant art recruiter or something like that will just look at all this stuff and filter out the ones that they're not doing things properly. So everything that's not like formally done, if there's no resume attached, or like the cover letter is kind of like badly written, or like if the portfolio is hard to navigate, all those things are going to disqualify you, like even if you're really good. So like you're going to be cut, from the beginning. So make sure that you follow all of these things properly. And this here, I chose the Blizzard page because it's a pretty standard kind of like submission or portfolio requirements. So you'll need your resume, of course. So that's resume. You can extract that out of LinkedIn, or you can create your own. Most of the time, your resume you'll want to keep it like one page, a page and a half max. And again, don't put things that are useless on there. Put things that are relevant to this particular job. This is kind of common sense stuff, but it actually, it's actually relevant for any kind of application that you're going to do in any kind of career. But yeah, your resume, your past jobs don't include like if you've been a burger flipper somewhere, or like if you've been in a retail store, like a retail store clerk or something like that. Completely useless, right? So I would say don't even mention them, or like maybe like very briefly mention them, like in one line, and that's it. What you want to pay attention to, what you want to emphasize, is anything that could help you in a job environment, in a studio environment, if you're applying for a studio position. So something that has to do with dealing with feedback, with criticism, something that's artistic, where your art skills are actually put at the test. And or obviously any kind of like video game or a film or outsourcing studio experience is going to be super relevant here. You'll also need a cover letter. Cover letter is one of those more like formal things, but it should be well written. So do yourself a favor and have somebody else check it for you once you're done, to make sure there's no typos, because those again they're gonna cut you because of that, right? So if you can't write properly, it's one of those things where you're not going to get hired. It's one of those basic things. But as an artist, you have to do art, but you also have to write documentations. If you're working on different tools, if you're like creating new pipelines, things like that, you'll have to write like wikis for other artists. You need to communicate via email all day long, every day, when you're working in a studio. So it's important that your grammar is correct, that you can actually write your thoughts properly. So it doesn't have to be that long. It can be half a page, like 500 words, maybe a little bit more, just explaining why you think you would do a great job, and why you think this company is a good fit for you. And then of course, your portfolio. And your portfolio, just give one portfolio. Don't need to send many. Whatever your best one is, whatever the one that's easiest to navigate, send that one. So include that one. And then and then you apply. You don't apply just one place. Obviously, it's likely that you're not going to be a good fit, because it's always it always depends what people are looking at, and always depends of the timing. Also, it depends on a lot of stuff. So getting a kind of like an email back from these companies, like big or small, is always kind of unlikely. So you have to approach it that way, even if your work is really good. So it's just a matter of timing. So you have to be applying at the right time for that company to be hiring. Even if they say they're hiring, maybe they're not hiring anything anytime soon. Maybe they just put the the application out there so that they can start to see, kind of like the scope out the kind of people that they're getting, and be able to filter, to only keep kind of like the really, really, really big names, big artists. So, don't be too bummed if you apply and you're not getting an answer, or if you get an answer, kind of like a generic answer, like, oh no, we're not interested. That happens all the time. But what I would say is keep applying. Kind of like every 6 months is a good wait period in between your applications. So after applying, don't even send like a reminder email. They get their email and they look at all their mails. You're not gonna help yourself by sending a kind of like a follow-up email asking, hey, did you look at my stuff? Of course they have, and if they're not, if they haven't responded back to you, it means that they're not interested. So just take it like this, take it for what it is. Unless you get like a proper reply from somebody that's interested, then like forget follow-ups. All right, so apply everywhere that you can possibly think of in your area, or anywhere else if you don't mind moving. And make sure that you do all these things. Pretty simple. You can use kind of like the similar cover letter for most of the studios. Don't use the same though. Tailor it for that particular studio, so that they feel like you're actually writing to them and not writing to just a generic person. And so do your homework. Do kind of like look at what that studio does. Look at why you'd be a great fit. Why is your art style a good match for them, and things like that. So pretty common sense stuff. But what's important to know is don't be bummed if they don't reply, because they likely won't, and it just have to be lucky. It just has to be like good timing. So that's the first way to get a art recruiter to contact you back. And the other way, which I think is the best way, is to go to game developer mixers. So I'm sure, well, maybe not, but it depends where you live, right? So if you live close to a big city or close to an area that have a lot of different game companies, then it's way more likely that those are going to be happening in your area. So it kind of sucks if you're not in an area where that exists, but going to like mixers is always a really, really good way to get introduced to the right people. And you might be asking what the hell I'm talking about here. What are those mixers? It's just events that some people in the industry kind of like organize, and it's always kind of like a meetup, right? So a meetup of artists, and somebody will be like, it'll start an event on Facebook, and it'll be like, hey, so we're gonna meet up at this bar, like on this day, whatever, like on Wednesday, and and that person is going to invite a bunch of people, and then everybody, it's a public event, so everybody's welcome to come. And and then you go there. Most of the time it's just a bunch of artists from like 1 or 2 or 3 different studios, whatever, and then they hang out, and then it's a perfect opportunity for somebody that's not in the industry to get your foot in and to get like important contacts that could eventually land you a job. So those are like a little bit hard if you're introverted, so it's one of those things where you'll have to bring out your extrovert for at least for a couple hours to be able to mingle with people and kind of like get to know the people that would possibly help you. But those mixers are really, really important. So where to find them? Like I said, Facebook's a really good place for that. That maybe on like forums, like if somebody's organizing something, they might mention it in forums. But I would say on Facebook is probably the best. The best place to find those events. At least from my experience, that's kind of always what it's been, and it's a little bit like word of mouth. So just have to kind of like find one, like look, search for it, like search for the kind of events that are in your areas, and hopefully there'll be something like that. So there's no like real place to look for it. There's no board where all those mixers, all those events are kind of posted, since it's generally kind of very not formal. It's just a gathering of people, like a meetup. So just look for it. Those, if you can find one, in your area, those are always really, really good. and sometimes they're recurring, so you can always keep going back, and kind of build relationships this way, build your contacts. So yeah, the idea here is to make friends, or to make a good impression on somebody that's working at a game studio. It doesn't have to be the art recruiter. It can be just a random artist or a programmer or whatever, and just make a good impression on them, and seem like a cool guy. And then at some point, mention that you're looking for a job, blah blah, and possibly show them what you do on your phone. Don't bring your portfolio or anything like that. It's supposed to be a casual event, so just your phone, and show them what you do. And if they seem interested, then they'll probably be like, hey, well, I work for this company, and maybe I'll show your stuff. So what's your name, blah blah, and then they'll take the contact. I know that I've personally done that a lot of time, not on the person trying to get in, but on the other end, like on the receiving end. So I've looked at a lot of other people's art, through those mixers. I've gone to a lot of them in my career. It's always a lot of fun, and there's all kinds of people there. And yeah, like I've looked at a lot of different phones, seen a lot of art, and then I've referred a lot of people too. So it's a really, really good way to get your foot in the door. I would say it's a lot more likely that it'll happen this way than if you're just applying on the websites. And then as far as your options, that's pretty much it. So when they say that it's easier to have a connection, like when they say that networking is really important, it's true. It's definitely true. I'd say probably like half the people I know that got their job were through friends that recommended them. So make sure that you have the right friends, make sure that you hang out with the right people. That's why I say be active in the community, be active on forums, because those people that you get to know, and the friends that you make on those platforms are eventually maybe already work in video game companies, and then they'll be the ones referring you in and allowing you to get your foot in the door. So super important, networking. Don't dismiss it. Of course, you can go the more passive way, like I've been saying, just applying and kind of like just getting more and more exposure. But if you really want to get in quickly, and if you think you have the chops for it, that's the way to go. So networking, super, super important. Okay, so now the first two steps have been covered. So exposure and how to apply, or how to mingle, to network, to get your foot in the door. Then what comes next? If you actually get that far, and if you don't, no problem. It'll happen eventually. Just go back to the first step, the very first step, exposure. Keep creating content, keep improving, keep showing people that you're motivated, and things will come. It's just, if things are not working out, if applying is not giving any kind of results, if you go to those mixers and people are not interested, go back to number one. Make sure to work on that first, and to grow that internet fame. It's very, very important. It's not the fame itself that's important. It's the fact that you're getting better and that people can see it. So now, if you've done that, and you actually get something, you get a reply from an art recruiter, or somebody reaches out to you, or somebody introduces you to an art director somewhere, through one of those mixers. What do you do? What happens next? All right, so this it's pretty standard in most game studios, big and small. So the first thing that you'll probably be asked to do, before anything else, before an interview, or before going any further, is going to be an art test. So art tests, it's one of those things that a lot of people hate, and then very rarely people are happy to do them, but especially like more experienced artists. Because the thinking goes that, why should I do an art test? You can just look at my portfolio. You should be able to tell if I'll be able to do the job or not. But anyways, it's just something that everybody does in the industry. All the studios will always ask you to do art tests. All right, so the art test is going to be essentially the same that they'll give to all the applicants. And after you have kind of like a few back and forth emails with the art recruiter, or with whatever contact you have in that company, or that studio, that outsourced studio, they will ask you, they'll just take a couple information on you, maybe have ask if you have any other art that they haven't seen, and then from there they'll, it'll be one of the first things that they'll ask, and it'll be an art test, kind of like the formal, kind of like first step to any job offer, if there is going to be one. So the art test is going to be, it's going to be different depending on where you're applying. But generally speaking, if you're applying for like a 3D character position, they'll give you kind of like a concept from one of their in-house artists, and then what you'll have to do is make a 3D model out of it. At least most of the time, that's what it's going to be. And then they'll give you a timeline. And most of the time, those timelines are pretty aggressive. So if you have a job already, it's a little bit hard to finish. But that's kind of how it goes. Like you have to suffer a little bit to get in. I'm not saying that's cool. I'm just saying that's how it is. So they'll give the same test to everybody, right? Everybody that applies for that job. So if you get an art test, don't think of it as something like you're in, right? Like you're gonna get a job. If you don't screw this up. No, they'll give that same art test to a lot of people. Oftentimes they'll have a lot of applicants for one position or like a few positions, and they'll look at all the art tests, the result of all the art tests, and then they'll pick the best ones. And then so it's very possible that you'll do an art test and they'll be like, nah, I'm not interested. You screwed it up. So that happens, and it's not because you screwed up yours. It's just, well, it might be, but it's probably because somebody else did a better job. And then it's hard to tell why, or if that's the case, because you'll never get to see the other applicants. They'll never mention, or very rarely mention, if there's somebody else applying for the same position. But yeah, it's just one of those things you have to do your best. So the art test, like I said, is going to be a character. If it's a character, then they're going to give you a concept, and then it'll be a very good representation of what you would be doing at that particular position, full time, if you do get hired. So make it your best work possible. Don't do it half-assed, because it will look like it. They're not dumb. Like the people that will be reviewing that art test are first the art recruiter, which most of the time is kind of like an artist, probably, or they know enough about art to be able to tell if something is good or not. But then if it is, if you impress them, then they'll pass it on to the team that would possibly hire you. So that's where any kind of bullshit will be caught. So you really don't want to screw anything up. So if it really looks nice, but then they look at they ask for your your UVs, or they ask to show your wireframe, or they ask to see your textures, and you kind of like skimp there, and then it wasn't that part isn't good, then that will hurt you. So you really have to create a quality asset. Not only does it have to be beautiful, it has to be good work, it has to be quality work, also technically good, because the team is going to look at your stuff. So if I take a step back here a little bit and talk about the number of interviews or art tests that I've seen personally in my career, I've seen a lot. And the reason why I'm mentioning that you have to create technically good work on top of being artistically good is because there's a lot of stuff that have been shown to us as a team, where the final result was really good, which is like, oh cool, so it gets the art recruiter excited. But then we look at it, and then we look at how things were built, and then if it's like super sloppy, then it's like do we want somebody like this that can't spend the time where it really matters? Because in games, or like in films, or for outsourcing studios, whatever it is, the technical aspect is very important. So if you're very, very sloppy there, then it just means that it's more stuff that we'll have to teach you, and it's just it's just points that you're losing compared to somebody else that does it really well. All right, so the art test, make sure that you nail it. It has to be kind of like your best work. And don't go half-ass on it. Some people do, and those people never make it. And so the first step, the art test, if you pass that, what happens next? And what normally happens is that if the art test is good, the team will want to bring you in for an in-person interview. So there might have been, at some point up until then, a phone call. So maybe before the art test, the team asked to call you.
just on the phone or like on Skype or something like that, just to get a feel for like who you are, like if you would be a good fit for at least first impressions, if you'd be a good fit for the team. And then if you seem like a cool person, like not too weird or too awkward or like too cocky, then they'll give you the art tests. And then if you pass the art test, then they'll want to meet you in person to make sure, like if the art test is good and if they want to meet you in person, it's always a good sign. It means that on the art side you passed. All right, so at this point they want you to work for them as an artist, but as a person, that's kind of like the question mark that's left, and that is super important. Again, it's one of those things that people don't really think about, that they think they nailed it if they go to the in-person interview, but not at all. Each team has most team, at least in the game industry, have a very, very strong culture, and they don't want to lose that. When they start to lose that culture, when they bring in somebody that doesn't fit in and that kind of causes trouble, it ruins everything for everybody, and then it costs them money. It's a bad thing, and they want to avoid it at all costs. So what they'll do is they'll bring you in, and then the in-person interview will be, of course, you'll get to talk about your art test a little bit, to make sure that you actually did it, that you didn't like pay someone to do it. They'll question you about a bunch of things. They'll ask, like things like, what would you do better on it? What do you think was the greatest part of it? Where do you think you suck the most? So typical interview questions, not going to be anything that's too out there, but a lot of it will be to criticize your own work. So be ready for that. Know your weaknesses, know your strength. Don't be cocky. Don't brag about anything. You have to be as humble as possible. You have to be someone that they want to work with. So I can't stress this enough. Like the in-person interview, it's about personality. It's not about your art anymore. It's about you as a person. Are you going to fit in with that team? So, dress nice, but don't dress crazy. Don't come off as just a weird person. Don't wear a suit. Don't wear a tie. Dress casually. Like people in game studios, they're just regular guys, kind of like regular geeks that dress up in t-shirts and t-shirts and jeans, and that's it, right? So don't go overboard. Just try to be yourself. Try to be as well spoken as you can. Try to seem like a cool person. Be as humble as possible, and just try to fit in with that group. Try to you really, like, what they're doing is they're trying to see if you could join their gang. And it's kind of weird that the art at this point is not that important, but it really isn't. There's been so many people that I've seen in my career where their art test is awesome, everything is awesome about it, and would be like, if it was just for the art, that guy would be in a moment, on a heartbeat. But then we bring that person in, and then it just doesn't fit. There's just something wrong, something off, about that person. Maybe it's a little too cocky, or maybe a little too proud, too much ego. They'll ask you, the kind of questions that we ask normally is about like working in teams. How do you take your feedback, and what's the worst feedback you got, and how you responded to it. There's a lot of things like this. So they'll really try to look at you as a person and try to see, if you'd be a good member for their culture. So we've caught a lot of people after that. Like if that doesn't work, even if the art is amazing, but the person the personality of the person is just not there, not a good match, then we're not gonna hire. And it's going to be the same in every studio where you go. Maybe smaller studios don't really care if they don't have much of a team, so you don't have anything. There's nothing for you to kind of like mess up. There's no culture to mess up for like indie studios. If they don't have that many people. But the bigger the studio, the more they'll drill you on your personality to make sure that you're a good fit. All right. So as far as the interview process, that's pretty much it, right? So it's not that complicated. It's a couple steps. If generally speaking, if you are applying for a job that's in a different location than where you are, they will pay for your travel. So don't hesitate to apply elsewhere, in different countries even. thinking that oh, I'll have to buy tickets to go there. I don't have that kind of money. No. Normally, you know, if they like you enough to bring you in for an in-person interview, they'll cover all that stuff, so you won't have to spend a penny. And yeah, so after that, you know, after the in-person interview, then comes the waiting period. And that might be a couple days, that might be a couple weeks. It really depends on the studio. The bigger the studio, normally the longer it takes. So what happens after that, you know, if you should probably know, is after you're done with your interview, there might be, like I said, other applicants that will come after you, that will have to go do the in-person interview for that same job that you're applying for. And then that's why there's always a delay after that interview, unless you were the last one. But yeah, there's going to be a bunch more people interviewing for the same stuff. They're going to kind of like see if they're a good match or not. And then once they've kind of like gone through all their applicants, then they'll be able to make a decision. And then if you're the one that's chosen, they'll send you a nice email, and it'll be like, hey, so we are interested in sending you an offer. And then that's the email that you want to have. That's the email that you want to receive. But you might also, and more likely, I would say, get the other email which says that no, we're gonna pass on you this time. You know, thank you for spending all this time for doing an art test, blah 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 blah, wasting all this time for us. But unfortunately, we're not gonna move forward with your application. So I say more likely because, generally speaking, there's more applicants than there are jobs. So yeah, you know, unless you get in, unless you're in that top tier, you know, of that group. You'll probably get one of those negative emails that you don't want to get. But hey, doesn't matter. You know, this is the process. Don't be bummed if that happens. Just it's part of the game. So you have to keep going. You have to keep doing other art tests, and try to go for other different interviews, and then try to maybe kind of like work on your answers. You know, if your interview didn't go that well, or if you really didn't know how to answer certain things, or maybe work on your attitude, or, you know, there's a couple of things that you'll probably want to work on depending on the outcome. That's all part of improving yourself, getting better and better at this, and then, you know, eventually you'll land it. You know, if you keep getting in-person interviews and you keep failing, then you'll know exactly where you're lacking. It'll be in personality, so you just have to improve that. You know, ask your friends, ask people that know you. You know, what you could improve, how you come off. You know, and you know, at first impression, because sometimes, you know, you don't know. Maybe you come off really rude and you're really unaware of that, or maybe you come off really cocky, but you're really not. So yeah, just get feedback on things that you need to improve. And, you know, if it's the art test that you always fail, then you'll know that the art itself is not good enough. So keep on working. You know, go back to step one, work on that exposure, work on those art chops, and then repeat the process. And yeah, sometimes it'll be a very long process. You know, especially if you're trying to apply a little bit too early. A little bit too early. If you don't wait for the exposure to do its job properly, and if you don't let your skill kind of mature enough. But it's always a good learning. It's always a good learning experience. So, you know, whatever the result, always take it as something that's good to learn out of. Something that's good to learn from, is what I'm trying to say. So that's pretty much the process, right? So as far as the interview goes, there's no real secrets. You know, one thing that might be a little bit intimidating that I haven't covered yet is that you know, when you go for the in-person interview, it happens often that the entire team is there. So the entire art team will be there, and maybe even like the game director and, like, you know, higher ups. So it's sometimes pretty intimidating, depending on the studio. So when I did my my in-person interview at Blizzard, for example, the entire art team was there. Well, it was a kind of small team, but there was like 5 people at my interview on the other side of the table, and then I was by myself on the other end, on the other side. So you know, especially back then, my English wasn't that great. So yeah, it was pretty intimidating, but it's part of it. You know, like, if you're comfortable, if you can at least appear comfortable in that kind of environment, then it's just it's all good points for you. And I ended up getting the job, so obviously I didn't screw it up. But yeah, it's possible that it's going to be a lot of people and you in that room. at least all the interviews that I've done to hire other artists have always been the entire team. At least at Blizzard, that's kind of how it went. So yeah, it's sometimes it'll be just one person, but I would say that expect some people, at least a few people in your interview at the same time. So yeah, do whatever it is that you need to do to get ready for that. Maybe practice in front of your parents, practice in front of your friends. I don't know what it is. Like have them try to question you about your art and try to practice your answers. You can always get better and that kind of stuff. So if it's something that's really important to you, don't wing it. Practice and like do your research and be as prepared as you can possibly be. So that is going to cover it for this chapter. So as far as getting your foot in the door, that's all there is to it. From there, if you get the job offer, great. If you don't, it's, too bad. It's not that big of a deal. Keep going at it. You'll get it one day. It will happen. So it doesn't always happen the first time around. And if you do get a job offer, then they'll send you, it's just like a regular contract with how much you'll make, how much money you'll make, if there's any benefits, like healthcare, things like that. If there's any bonus that are set, so maybe you'll get like 10% bonus every year or something like that, whatever it is. And then it's just a matter of do you accept or not. If you think you're a big shot, if you have a lot of experience and you feel like the offer is a little bit low, you can always counter. That's always cool. But generally speaking, if it's your first job, just go with it because you probably don't have that much leverage. So yeah, if it's an offer that you can survive on and it's something that you're interested in, then there you go. You just sign that contract, send it back, and then their HR is gonna set you all up, and then you'll start your adventure and. In the game industry or the VFX industry, or as an outsource artist in a studio. So that's pretty much it, right? So if you're looking to work freelance, you can obviously ignore the last two steps, applying and then the interview. Those are not going to apply to you. All you have to worry about is step number one, exposure. So if you get a lot of exposure, people will contact you, and that's kind of how you get your gigs. It's a couple ones, people will start talking about you, and then it's easier and easier as you go to get more and more job as a freelance artist. But yeah, freelance artist, all you have to do is it's all marketing yourself. It's all exposure. That's all it is. So in a sense, it's a little bit more simple. But it's a little bit harder to make it at the same time. So yeah, this wraps it up. So it's been quite an adventure. I really sincerely hope that this was helpful. Tried to cover absolutely everything I could possibly think of as far as a career as a 3D artist. There's been a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of content, a lot of things to cover. There's a lot of things to think about, obviously. So don't be overwhelmed by all this. Hopefully this guide has helped you kind of give you a much better idea of what to expect in the future. Regardless of where you stand and kind of like the whole process. And hopefully it's given you kind of like confidence to move forward if this is something that you like. Now that there's no more kind of like unknowns. I know that this was the biggest worry for me, and when I was a young artist, to not know, to have kind of like the fear of the unknown, by not knowing what to expect with this career, with this job, and with the entire process of actually getting a job, getting my first offer. So hopefully this has shed some light onto that. Please do share with your friends, if it's something that they could benefit from as well. That'd be really, really appreciated. So thank you so much for taking on this big adventure with me. I really, really, really hope that you're able to create some awesome stuff, after all this, and that you do land that job. So if you do it, might not be right away, of course, but when you do it, if you do, please let me know. I would be so stoked to hear about this. And if you do create some awesome characters or awesome creatures, whatever it is, after this tutorial, show them to me in the comments or in links or via email, whatever it is. I'm super curious to see what you're gonna create. So yeah, that wraps it up. Career as a 3D artist has been the best experience of my life. I would not take it back for anything. Being able to do what you love there's nothing like it. And I really hope that this allows you to do just that, do the same that I was able to do. I was fortunate enough to do. If you're just at the start, keep grinding. It's going to happen one day. There is the light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully, we'll get to that light a lot faster after this complete guide. So that is going to be it for now. Again, thank you so much. Mark Burnett signing out.